people from small, isolated towns. What's the darkest secret your community was hiding? I used to think the scariest thing about my hometown was the crushing boredom. Then I found my grandfather's journals. He wrote about the town's debt, the disappearances every 30 years, and the thing that lived in the old copper mine. He called it the bell ringer because it only came when the old church bell, the one that hadn't worked in a century, started to toll on its own. The last entry was just 4 words. It knows my name. Last night, for the first time since I was a child, I heard a bell toll in the dead of night. My hometown, Harmony Creek, is one of those places that looks like it was ripped from a postcard and forgotten by time. Tucked away in a valley, surrounded by dense forests and perpetually misty mountains, it's the kind of town where everyone knows your name, your business, and what you had for breakfast. The population hovers around 1,000 souls, and the biggest event of the year is the Founders' Day picnic. It's quaint, it's peaceful, and it's built on a foundation of absolute soul-crushing terror. I just didn't know it until I came back to bury my grandfather. I'd left for college at 18 and never really looked back. A phone call here, a Christmas visit there. But Harmony Creek was my past. I was a city guy now, an architect living a life of structured steel and concrete, a world away from the town's ancient oaks and crumbling stone walls. When Gramps passed, I was the last of the line, the sole inheritor of his dusty old house and a lifetime of accumulated junk. My plan was simple. Fly in, arrange the funeral, clear the house, sell it, and be back in my high-rise apartment before my ficus plant even noticed I was gone. The first few days were a blur of funeral arrangements and awkward condolences from people I barely remembered. Your granddad was a good man, Leo, Sheriff Brody told me, his hand a heavy weight on my shoulder. Quiet, kept to himself, but a pillar of this community. Mayor Thompson, a woman whose smile was as fixed and unyielding as the granite of the mountains, said much the same. Arthur was one of our finest. He understood the importance of tradition, of maintaining the peace of Harmony Creek. I just nodded and smiled, eager to get through the pleasantries. It was during the 3rd day of clearing out Gramps' house that my neat little plan went to shit. The place was a time capsule. Dust motes danced in the afternoon light, illuminating stacks of old newspapers, boxes of yellowed photographs, and enough weird carved wooden birds to populate a small forest. His study was the epicenter of his life's clutter. He was a local history buff, or so I thought. His shelves were crammed with books on regional folklore, geological surveys of the old copper mine, and town records dating back to its founding in the 1780s. Tucked away in the bottom drawer of his desk, beneath a pile of tax returns from the 90s, I found them, a set of 5 leather-bound journals, his journals. Curiosity got the better of me. I figured they'd be filled with boring anecdotes about gardening or complaints about the weather. I poured myself a whiskey from the decanter he kept on his desk, sat in his worn leather chair, and opened the first one. The early entries were exactly what I expected. Observations about the townsfolk, notes on his research into the town's founding, sketches of local flora. But as I flipped further, the tone started to change. The handwriting grew more frantic, more slanted. He started mentioning things that made no sense. October 12th, 1993. The anniversary approaches. The air is thick with it. They're all pretending not to notice. But I see it in their eyes. The forced smiles at the general store. The way Sheriff Miller's hand hovers near his gun when a tourist asks about the old mine. They know. They're getting ready. I frowned, taking a sip of whiskey. Sheriff Miller had retired years ago, a grandfatherly figure who used to give me candy. What were they getting ready for? October 21st, 1993. It's the quiet that's the worst. The whole town is holding its breath. I've been checking the records again. It's always the same. Every 30 years, a newcomer, a drifter, someone with no ties. They just vanish. A line in the town ledger. Moved on. But nobody ever saw them leave. We have a debt. A contract signed in blood and stone by the founders. They traded prosperity for a price. My blood ran cold. A debt? A contract? This sounded like the ramblings of a crazy old man. But Gramps, he'd always been the most rational person I knew. Grounded. Sane. I kept reading, my heart starting to pound a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. He wrote about the old abandoned copper mine, the one on the edge of town we were always warned to stay away from as kids. He said it wasn't copper they were really digging for. He described it as a tomb, a prison for something ancient, something the founding families had disturbed and then, in their terror, made a pact with. He called it the bell ringer. October 29th, 1993. They've chosen a young man, a backpacker who made the mistake of staying too long, charmed by the town's facade. I saw him talking to Mayor Thompson's father yesterday. The look on the mayor's face, it was like a butcher admiring a prize hog. God forgive us. God forgive me for doing nothing. And then, the entry that made me drop the journal. November 1st, 1993. I heard it last night. The bell. from St. Giles's steeple, a single clear toll that echoed through the valley. That bell hasn't rung in 100 years. The mechanism is rusted solid. But it rang. And this morning, the backpacker is gone. The debt is paid. The town can breathe again for another 30 years. But I feel its gaze on me now. It knows I'm watching. It knows I know. The bell ringer sees all. The final journal was mostly filled with frantic research, drawings of a strange spiral symbol, and paranoid observations. He wrote about the founding families, the Thompsons, the Brodys, the Wainwrights, how they were the keepers of the pact. He believed they were getting ready to pass the duty on to the next generation. The last page had only a few shaky lines. July 15th, 2023. It's almost time again. 30 years. I feel it in my bones. I'm too old to fight, too scared to run. I tried to leave once, had a heart attack on the county line. Brody's boy, the new sheriff, brought me back, said I belonged here. This town doesn't let you go. It knows my name. It's been whispering it in the wind. He died of a heart attack a week later. I sat there in the dark, the whiskey glass shaking in my hand. It was insane. It had to be. Just the frightened delusions of an old man succumbing to dementia. I tried to laugh it off, to dismiss it. But I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled deep in my gut. I went to bed that night telling myself it was all bullshit. I was a man of logic, of blueprints and stress calculations. I didn't believe in monsters and mines or ghost bells. I fell into a restless sleep, the old house groaning around me. And then I heard it. A sound, faint at first, cutting through the silence of the night. It was metallic, resonant, and impossibly clear. A single toll, coming from the direction of the old St. Giles Church. I shot upright in bed, my body drenched in a cold sweat. My heart felt like it was trying to beat its way out of my chest. It was real. I wasn't dreaming. The bell had rung, and as the sound faded into the oppressive silence, I knew with a certainty that defied all logic that my grandfather wasn't crazy. The 30 years were up, and the town was getting ready to pay its debt. The next morning, the town felt different. Or maybe it was me who was different. The cheerful "Good morning, Leo" from Mrs. Gable at the bakery sounded hollow, her smile strained. I saw Sheriff Brody parked by the town square, not looking at anything in particular, just watching. His eyes met mine for a second, and there was no warmth in them. It was a look of appraisal, a shepherd counting his flock. I needed to know more. I needed to know if I was losing my mind. My grandfather's journals were a start, but they were just words. I needed proof. The journals mentioned the town archives, kept in the basement of the library. That seemed like the logical place to start. The Harmony Creek Library was a small stone building run by Eleanor Vance. She was thin and wiry, with sharp, intelligent eyes behind thick spectacles. She'd been a friend of my grandfather's. "Leo," she said, her voice a soft, papery rustle. "It's good to see you, though I wish it were under better circumstances. Arthur was a dear friend. He spent a lot of time here." "I know," I said, trying to sound casual. "He mentioned it. Actually, I was hoping to look at some of the old town records. For my own curiosity about the family history." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "The archives are fragile and disorganized. What exactly are you looking for?" "The founding records, and maybe some census data from, say 90, 60, 30 years ago." A flicker of something. Fear, warning, crossed her face before it was replaced by a professional calm. "An odd request. Most people find the ledgers quite dry. I'm an architect," I lied smoothly. "I have a thing for historical structures and the populations they supported. It's a quirk." She studied me for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. "Very well. The archives are in the basement. I'll show you. But be careful. The wiring down there is as old as the books." The basement was cold and smelled of damp paper and decay. Rows of wooden shelves buckled under the weight of enormous, leather-bound ledgers. Eleanor showed me to a small table with a single, bare bulb hanging over it, casting long, dancing shadows. "The census records and town meeting minutes are over there," she pointed. "Holler if you need me. And Leo," she paused at the top of the stairs, "some history is best left buried." The warning was clear, but it only fueled my resolve. I spent hours down there, my fingers covered in dust, poring over the brittle pages. And there it was, in black and white, a pattern hidden in plain sight. Every 30 years, like clockwork. 1903, a drifter, name unknown, noted as working odd jobs. A month later, a town meeting entry, concerns about vagrancy resolved. No further mention of him. 1933, an itinerant salesman, records show he checked into the local boarding house. A month later, another entry. Mr. Abernathy settled his accounts and moved on to seek fortune elsewhere. His room was listed as vacant the next day. 1963, a young woman, a folk singer passing through. Her name was Sarah. There was a photo of her in the local paper, smiling, holding a guitar at the Founders' Day picnic. The next month, nothing. She was just Gone. 1993. A backpacker from Germany named Klaus. The paper mentioned his plans to hike the mountain trails. Then silence. 4 people. All outsiders. All vanished without a trace. Their disappearances neatly papered over with bureaucratic one-liners. And it always happened in late October or early November. The timing of the bell. My grandfather was right. I found something else. In the margins of the 1933 records, next to the entry about the salesman, was a tiny hand-drawn symbol. It was a spiral, the same one my grandfather had been obsessively sketching in his final journal. My phone buzzed, startling me so badly I nearly knocked over a stack of books. It was a text from a local number I didn't recognize. Meet me at the old quarry. Midnight. Come alone. You're asking questions that will get you killed. There was no name. My first instinct was to call the police, but the police was Sheriff Brody. He was one of them. The thought sent a fresh wave of ice through my veins. Who could I trust? The message felt like a trap, but it also felt like my only chance at finding an ally. My mind raced. Eleanor? She'd warned me off, but maybe that warning was her way of helping. Could she have sent the text? It seemed unlikely. Whoever it was, they knew I was digging. The walls of Harmony Creek were closing in. As dusk fell, I drove my rental car out toward the edge of town, my grandfather's journals on the passenger seat. I needed to see the mine for myself. The road turned to gravel, then to dirt, winding through the dark, imposing forest. A rusted chain-link fence blocked the path, adorned with faded, no trespassing signs. I parked the car and walked the rest of the way. The air grew cold and heavy. The silence here was different from the silence of the town. It was ancient, profound. It felt like the forest was watching me, holding its breath. Then I saw it. The entrance to the mine was a gaping black maw in the side of the mountain, like a scream frozen in stone. The wooden supports were rotting, and a set of old rusted ore cart tracks disappeared into the darkness. Above the entrance, carved into the rock face, was the spiral symbol. It was weathered and covered in moss, but unmistakable. A wave of primal fear washed over me, so intense it almost buckled my knees. This was real. This was the place from my grandfather's nightmares. The prison, the tomb. I felt a pressure in my head, a low hum that was almost subliminal. It was a feeling of being perceived, of being weighed and measured by something vast and malevolent that slumbered within the mountain. I backed away slowly, my heart hammering. I had to go to the quarry. I had to know who sent that message. Turning my back on the mine felt like turning my back on a predator. I didn't run, but every instinct screamed at me to. The quarry was on the other side of town, an ugly, man-made scar on the landscape, abandoned decades ago. The moon was a pale sliver, casting everything in shades of gray and black. I parked on the ridge and walked down into the basin, the crunch of gravel under my feet sounding deafeningly loud. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding small and weak. A figure detached itself from the shadow of a rusted-out piece of machinery. It was a man, gaunt and nervous, his face etched with worry. I recognized him. His name was Thomas Wainwright. His family was one of the founding families my grandfather had listed as keepers. But Thomas was the town outcast, the black sheep. People said he was a drunk, unstable. "You're Arthur's grandson," he said, his voice a ragged whisper. He kept glancing over his shoulder, as if expecting to be followed. "You sent the text," I stated. "Why?" "Because you're going to get yourself killed," he hissed. "You're asking the same questions your grandfather did, and they're noticing. The Thompsons, the Brodys, my own goddamn family. They see you. They hear you." "Then it's true," I breathed. "All of it. The pact, the disappearances." Thomas let out a harsh, broken laugh. "True? It's the bedrock of this town. It's our original sin. Our founders were starving. The land was barren. They dug the mine looking for copper and found him, the bell ringer, the old man in the mountain, whatever you want to call it. It offered them a deal. Prosperity, rich soil, healthy livestock, a peaceful town. All it asked for was a tithe, a life every 30 years, to keep it sleeping." The casual way he said it, the weary acceptance, was more terrifying than any frantic screaming would have been. "A sacrifice," I said, the word tasting like ash. "They dress it up," he spat. "They call it balancing the scales. They choose an outsider, someone who won't be missed. They hold a little ceremony down in the deep chambers. And then, the bell tolls, to let everyone know the deal is good for another 30 years. And the town flourishes. My grandfather, he tried to stop it." Thomas shook his head. "He tried to understand it. He got too close. They encouraged his heart condition. A quiet word from the doctor, the wrong prescription. It's easy to arrange things in a town this small. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. They had killed him, my quiet, harmless grandfather. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice shaking with a rage that was starting to eclipse my fear. Your family is part of it. My great-grandfather made the pact. My grandfather enforced it. My father, he tried to refuse. Thomas's voice cracked. He didn't want to be a keeper. 29 years ago, he tried to go to the state police. He had an unfortunate hunting accident the next day. I was 10. I know what they did. I've been living with it ever since. They think I'm just a town drunk. They let me live because I'm a Wainwright and a harmless wreck. But I saw you. You have the same look my father had. You're going to try and fight it. The bell rang, I said. That means they're getting ready. They've already chosen, Thomas said, his eyes wide with fear. That's why I had to find you. It's not a drifter this time. They're getting arrogant. There's a new family in town, the Masons. They bought the old Miller farm. They have a little girl, Lily. She's 8. My blood turned to ice. A child. They wouldn't, I whispered, horrified. It has to be someone not of the town's original blood, Thomas explained, his voice frantic. Someone whose absence won't unravel the community. The Masons are newcomers. No deep roots. Perfect for them. The ritual is tomorrow night, the night of the new moon. We have to do something. Go to the police, the state police, and say what, he scoffed. That our town is run by a death cult that sacrifices people to a monster in a mine? They'll laugh us out of the county. Sheriff Brody will get a call, and we'll both have unfortunate accidents. No, there's no outside help. Your grandfather knew that. The only way to stop it is from the inside. How? I demanded, my mind reeling. Your grandfather was looking for something, Thomas said, leaning closer. The founders. They weren't all monsters. A few of them had regrets. They built in a failsafe, a way to break the pact. It's described in the original town charter, the one they keep locked away in the mayor's office. He believed the key to it was in the mine itself, a way to sever the connection, to put the bell ringer back to sleep for good, not just for 30 years. But they'll kill anyone who goes near the mine. They will, Thomas agreed. But tomorrow night, all the keepers, the mayor, the sheriff, my uncle, they'll all be at the Mason's farm. They have to consecrate the offering on site, a whole ritualistic bit of theater. That's our chance. They'll be distracted. We can get into the mine. It was a suicide mission, a crazy, desperate plan hatched in a quarry with the town drunk. But when I thought of that little girl, Lily Mason, I knew I didn't have a choice. My grandfather had died because he knew the truth. I couldn't live with myself if I ran from it. Okay, I said, the word feeling heavy and final. Okay, what do we need to do? Thomas looked at me, a flicker of something like hope in his haunted eyes. Your grandfather's journals. He drew maps, symbols, everything he found. We need them, and we need to be ready to go into the dark. The next 24 hours were the longest of my life. We met in secret at my grandfather's house, a place now tainted by the knowledge of his murder. With trembling hands, Thomas and I spread the journals across the dining room table. The maps were crude but detailed, pieced together from old geological surveys and my grandfather's own dangerous explorations. He'd mapped the upper levels of the mine, but the deeper chambers, the ones Thomas called the ceremonial halls, were marked with question marks and drawings of the spiral symbol. This is the failsafe he was looking for, Thomas said, pointing to a passage my grandfather had transcribed from a nearly destroyed letter written by one of the town's founders. The heart of the beast is the heart of the stone. Sound binds it, and sound can break it. The 5 bells must chime as one, not in celebration, but in severance. 5 bells? I asked. He only ever mentioned the one at St. Giles. The keepers have 4 others, Thomas explained. Smaller ones forged from the same strange, resonant metal they found in the mine. They're hidden. One in the mayor's office, one in the sheriff's station, one at my family's estate, and one somewhere else my grandfather couldn't pinpoint. They bring them to the ritual. They chime them to awaken the bell ringer enough to accept the offering. So we need to find these bells and ring them all at once? Not just ring them. The text says as one. My grandfather believed it meant they had to produce a single harmonic frequency. A chord of severance. He was an engineer before he retired. He was working on the calculations. Thomas flipped to the back of the last journal. There, on the final page, was a complex series of equations, musical notations, and frequency numbers. It was my grandfather's last desperate piece of work. He figured it out, I whispered in awe. He found the chord that could break the pact. He did, Thomas said grimly. But we still have to get the bells, and we have to do it while they're all at the Mason farm, getting ready to take that little girl. Our plan was desperate and hinged on split-second timing. While the keepers were at the Mason farm, I would break into the mayor's office and the sheriff's station to steal the 2 bells. Thomas, using his family name as a cover, would retrieve the one from his ancestral home. The 4th, the missing one, was a huge problem. Where could it be? I asked, scanning the maps. He suspected it was somewhere public, but hidden, Thomas mused, tracing a line with his finger. St. Giles. The big bell is the anchor, the one that calls. It makes sense the final piece would be close to it. The plan was set. That night under the sliver of a new moon, the town was unnervingly quiet. I could feel the tension, the collective unspoken anticipation. I watched from my grandfather's window as a convoy of 3 dark SUVs, including Sheriff Brody's official vehicle, drove slowly out of town toward the old Miller farm. It was time. My heart was a jackhammer in my chest as I jimmied the lock on the back window of the town hall. The building was silent, filled with the ghosts of 100 years of lies. I found the bell in Mayor Thompson's office, just as Thomas had said. It was small, no bigger than my fist, made of a dark, oily-looking metal that felt cold to the touch. It was engraved with the spiral symbol. I slipped it into my backpack and got out, my breath catching in my throat at every creak of the floorboards. The sheriff's station was harder. The place screamed authority, and breaking in felt like a cardinal sin. I managed to get a window open in the back and slipped inside. I found the second bell locked in an evidence box labeled Founder's Relic. It was identical to the first. As I was leaving, I saw it on a bulletin board. A new flyer. A picture of a smiling, 8-year-old girl with bright red hair, Lily Mason. Community babysitter needed for the Masons. Apply with Mayor Thompson. It was a sham, a way to get close to her. Sickness rose in my throat. I met Thomas at the edge of the woods behind St. Giles Church. He was pale and shaking, but clutched a third bell in his hand. My uncle almost caught me, he breathed. He came back for something I hid in a closet. God, Leo, I don't know if I can do this. We have to, Thomas, I said, my voice harder than I intended. They have her. That left the fourth bell. We crept into the old, deconsecrated church. It smelled of dust and rot. The main bell hung silent and massive in the belfry above. We searched everywhere. In the pulpit, under the pews, in the vestry. Nothing. It's not here, Thomas despaired, sinking onto a pew. Wait, I said, my eyes scanning the room again. My grandfather's notes. It is hidden in plain sight, offered up to all but seen by none. I looked at the collection plate on a small table by the entrance. It was made of tarnished brass, like 100 others I'd seen. But there, on the underside, nearly worn away, was the faint etching of a spiral. I flipped it over. It wasn't a plate, it was a shallow bell, designed to look like something else entirely. We had it. Now for the hardest part, the mine. Armed with flashlights, my grandfather's maps, and the 4 small bells, we entered the gaping maw. The air inside was instantly frigid, carrying a scent of damp earth and something else. Something metallic and wrong, like old blood and ozone. The low hum I'd felt before was stronger here, a constant pressure that made my teeth ache. We followed the maps through the twisting tunnels. The silence was absolute, broken only by our footsteps and the dripping of water. After what felt like an eternity, we reached what the map labeled the Great Chamber. It was a massive cavern, the ceiling lost in the darkness above. In the center of the chamber was a raised stone dais, and on it, a 5th larger bell, the size of a small drum. This was the altar. This is it, Thomas whispered, his voice trembling. This is where they do it. The hum was intense here. It felt like the entire mountain was a living thing, breathing around us. We placed the 4 smaller bells around the central one, just as my grandfather's diagrams instructed. I pulled out his notes, the complex calculations for the harmonic frequency. We have to strike them in the right sequence with the right amount of force to create the chord, I said, my voice unsteady. I had a small tuning fork my grandfather had left with his notes. It was our only way to get the pitch right. Suddenly, a blinding light flooded the cavern. Well, look what we found, Mayor. Sheriff Brody stood at the entrance to the chamber, flanked by Mayor Thompson and Thomas's uncle, a hard-faced man named Marcus Wainwright. They weren't at the farm. It had been a trap. They knew we were coming. The town drunk and the prodigal grandson, Mayor Thompson said, her voice dripping with venom. Her fixed smile was gone, replaced by a look of cold fury. Did you really think you could interfere? Did you think we wouldn't know? My blood ran cold. Where is the girl? I demanded. Lily is perfectly safe, the mayor said coolly. She's at home, watching cartoons. She was never the offering. She was the bait. For you. Brody stepped forward, his hand on his holstered pistol. Your grandfather was a problem, a loose thread. We had hoped you'd have the good sense to stay away. But you're just like him. Can't leave things alone. The bell ringer has been sleeping for 30 years. It's hungry, and it's not particular. An outsider with no ties to the town? You're the perfect offering, Leo. A worthy successor to the backpacker your grandfather mourned so much. They were going to sacrifice me. You won't get away with this, I spat, trying to buy time, my mind racing. Get away with it? Marcus Wainwright laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. Boy, we are the town. This is our duty, our burden, and our salvation. We're offering you a chance to be part of something great. To grant Harmony Creek another generation of peace and prosperity. He's a murderer, Thomas suddenly screamed, pointing at his uncle. He killed my father. Your father was weak, Marcus snarled. He tried to break the covenant. He would have doomed us all. While they were distracted by Thomas's outburst, I saw my chance. It was insane, but it was the only one I had. I lunged for the bells, the tuning fork in my hand. I struck the first small bell, the note ringing out, sharp and clear. Brody drew his gun. Don't! I ignored him, striking the second, then the third, my movements clumsy with panic. The notes hung in the air, discordant and ugly. Mayor Thompson shrieked, a sound of pure rage. Stop him! He'll wake it up wrong! The hum in the cavern intensified, rising to an agonizing thrum. The very rock around us seemed to vibrate. A deep, groaning sound echoed from the depths of the mine, a sound of something vast and ancient stirring from its slumber. I struck the fourth bell, the shallow plate. The chord was still wrong, a jarring mess of sound. Marcus lunged for me, and Thomas threw himself at his uncle's legs, tackling him. They went down in a heap. Brody raised his pistol, aiming squarely at my chest. It's over, kid. I had one last chance. The central bell. My grandfather's notes said it had to be struck in harmony with the others, but I was out of time. With a desperate yell, I kicked the stand of the central bell, toppling it. It crashed to the stone floor with a deafening, discordant clang. It wasn't the chord of severance. It was a note of pure chaos. And the mountain answered. The entire cavern shook violently. A roar erupted from the depths of the mine, a sound of geological and biological fury that shattered the air. It wasn't the sound of a monster. It was the sound of a prison breaking. A fissure cracked open across the floor of the chamber, racing towards us. You fool, Mayor Thompson screamed, her face a mask of terror. You've broken the pact. You've set it free. Brody, his face ashen, forgot all about me. He turned and ran, scrambling for the tunnel. But it was too late. The ground beneath him gave way, and he fell into the newly opened chasm with a scream that was quickly swallowed by the darkness. Marcus shoved Thomas aside and scrambled to his feet, his eyes wide with madness. He ran, not for the exit, but deeper into the mine, towards the source of the roar, screaming, Master, I'm still loyal! A blast of frigid air and foul-smelling gas erupted from the fissure, and he was gone. The cavern was collapsing. Rocks rained down from the ceiling. Leo, we have to go! Now! Thomas yelled, pulling at my arm. We ran. We scrambled through the collapsing tunnels, choking on dust, the roar of the unmaking of the world at our heels. I don't know how we made it out. We burst back into the night air just as the entire face of the mountain gave way, the entrance to the mine vanishing in a cataclysmic landslide of rock and earth. We stood there, panting, covered in dust and blood, watching the mountain settle. The hum was gone. The oppressive presence that had blanketed the valley for centuries had vanished. In its place was just silence, the clean, empty silence of a normal night. The aftermath was chaos. The earthquake, as it was officially called, shook the town to its core. The state geologist arrived and declared the entire area around the old mine unstable, permanently cordoning it off. Without the bell ringer's influence, the unnatural luck of Harmony Creek began to curdle. The soil grew less fertile. The livestock fell sick. A blight hit the ancient oaks. The power structure crumbled, with Sheriff Brody Marcus Wainwright dead and Mayor Thompson suffering a complete nervous breakdown. Screaming about a debt that could never be repaid, the town was headless. The state took over the administration. The secrets started to bleed out. Embezzlement, corruption. The story of the Masons' babysitter ad came out, and though no one could prove the unbelievable truth, the intent was clear enough. Thompson was institutionalized. The other keeper families, stripped of their power and purpose, either moved away in shame or faded into obscurity. Thomas, ironically, became something of a town leader. Sober and filled with a grim purpose, he helped guide Harmony Creek through its painful rebirth. He never spoke of what happened in the mine. Neither did I. It was our secret, our burden. I sold my grandfather's house but didn't leave. I couldn't. I felt tied to this place, responsible for its broken, fragile future. I'd come to bury my grandfather and ended up burying the town I thought I knew. Harmony Creek is different now. It's poorer, harder, more real. The postcard image is gone, replaced by something honest and scarred. Sometimes at night I look up at the collapsed mountain and wonder what it was we set free. Or if maybe we just put it to sleep for good. My grandfather's journal ended with the words, "It knows my name." I didn't understand the true terror of that phrase until now. I broke the pact, I ruined its home, and I have a feeling that somewhere in the deep, silent darkness beneath the earth, the bell ringer remembers mine.
Thanks for watching. If you got this far, leave a comment, like if you liked it, and follow for more.